Welcome to Vyapt Connect, an initiative to connect global leaders on pressing issues. Now, this live event will aim to accelerate new strategies for businesses in 2022. And the topic of discussion this afternoon is innovation and implications of businesses in 2022. We have esteemed panel of guests for discussion today. Please join with me to welcome Omar Sarif Muhammad, the Cluster Head, India, Middle East and Africa at Roche Diabetes Care. Hi, Omar.
Hi. Hi, Pankaj.
We have with us Mr. Kapil Maheshwari, the President, Reliance Industries Limited, Renewable Energy and Green Hydrogen Ecosystem Development. Hi, Kapil.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
And we also have with us Prashant Patil, the Regional Director of South Asia in your group. Hi, Prashant.
Hi, Pankaj. Good afternoon and good morning, everyone.
So I would like to start with Omar. And my first curiosity to Omar is, in an era of misinformation and polarization, the subject of trust has become even more important. Now, what do the findings mean for CEOs when it comes to their companies, employees, customers, and society at large?
Right. So, first of all, thank you for this invite, Pankaj, and happy to be a part of this session. Respected panelists and viewers, a very good afternoon. Albeit a bit late, but wishing you all a very happy new year, and I hope and wish that all of you, along with your loved ones, are safe and healthy. Well, coming to your question, I think in an era of misinformation, polarization, I think you picked on a very important word, which is trust. I believe, Pankaj, trust is all about walking the talk, especially from leaders' perspective, and also being compassionate, yet taking the right decisions and embracing a strategy for the future and providing a psychological security. Now, let me try and explain this to you. We do know that when COVID did impact all of us, there was an impact not only on the business, but how we work. That means also on the people. So let's take each of them one by one. So when you look at the impact on business, we had impact on manufacturing ecosystem, we had impact on supply chain, the movement of goods and labor was pretty unclear for us. Then it was procurement, which means the industry that I come from, which is pharmaceutical industry, it hugely depended on import of APIs, majorly from China. So there was a bit of a issue out there. And then last was sales and marketing. It's a key pillar of the industry, and most of our team works on the ground as Salesforce. So there was a lot of disruption across this. So this was impact on business because we didn't know what to do and how to get started here. The second one was the impact on workforce, which meant safety and security of our people. Second, I would say shift toward digital ways of working. And the third one, which I put a lot of emphasis on, was the psychological impact of people working with us. So I think just like I guess the panelists will also agree with me, we just like any other company looked at a framework which can support all of this disruption, and we looked at cost, which with regards to organization, and how could we quickly reap the benefits of reduced costs right from the initial phase of the pandemic. The second one was capacity. Organizations were also quick to realize that while layoffs were not a feasible option, a conservative approach on filling vacancies could be a step in the right direction. The number three, which we all realized, Pankaj, was capability. And the capability of the workforce was challenged during the pandemic, and most firms realized the need for transformational changes on the skilling and training front. The next was, I would say, connection. Organizations were forced into finding new ways of keeping their workforce connected, engaged, and productive. And last, I would say, was compliance. An important aspect of the response to COVID-19 was to ensure that the compliance and regulatory guidelines and the protocols were followed. So I would say there was a lot that went behind this, Pankaj. So we had to do as leaders, juggling of too many things out there, right? It just came onto our face. But I think as leaders, we learned as we were on the driving seat and trying to change the wheels as you were driving. Back to you, Pankaj.
So rightly said, Omar. And in fact, I also believe that leaders, probably enhance their capabilities as well, because they now know that they could do so much, which I think they were not knowing until March 2020.
Very much true. Very true.
Thank you so much, Omar, for your inputs on this particular question. I would now go to Kapil. Kapil, you have worked a lot into energy segment, and energy companies face the challenge of moving to a lower carbon future while maintaining the security of supply and avoiding price spikes. How do different sources stack up, and what are the challenges and opportunities for businesses and consumers?
Pankaj, so you have summed up the whole energy sector in one question. So let me try address it in different portions. First, we need to understand for any industry, like Omar just mentioned pharma, but energy would add an element of cost to it. Some industries are very energy intensive. So there are port industries where energy forms 70% of the overall capital cost as well, or the running cost. So, and then there are industries where it's in small portion, but almost all industries are faced. And at an industrial level, we have all seen then how important energy security and independence is for the country. Well, pharma might have faced one aspect of it, like Omar just mentioned, of imports for APIs, etc. In a similar way, import dependence was there on multiple other things as well. And we need to understand and appreciate the fact that for so far, India has been primarily an oil, gas, or coal based. So majority of our power is coal based, and we have all seen while electricity or energy was an essential service even during the peak lockdown, those services were allowed to be continued. The difference between the conventional and non-conventional way, the way energy resources would be separated, was very evident during those times. Typically when there are no supply chain disruption and the coal power was, like transportation of coal was allowed to in power plant. Now that supply chain breakages have happened because of various reasons during lockdowns, pandemic, etc. But at the same time, and renewable source which only takes wind and solar has not faced this kind of a disruption. I still get my sunlight. Wind is still a natural resource which is available, and the operation and maintenance of that plant is so easy that even if I have a very reduced manpower, I'm still able to run that power plant, because that's technically, once you set up, it's almost nil kind of in maintenance for a period of 20-25 years. So all of us have seen that transition. Even to that extent, why only energy companies, even different, you would consider the fact that many of these very large oil and gas companies have transformed into an energy company. So many of these oil giants you would have seen have not only opened a business unit for energy, these are now different companies within those setup who are doing energy. So be it Shell, be it Total, be it BP, have this. So many of these companies, apart from being global IPPs, which are independent power producers, or generate power generation companies, have now come up as in energy companies. And the transition which is required to a lower carbon footprint is not only a need of an hour, is to do with multiple other things, the way companies would raise financing in future. Because given that there are two things which are driving the growth of electricity or energy in India. First is the whole electrification is happening, and then second is the more importance on sustainability and ESG. So as people are counting that, yes, I now need to be careful about how my sustainable my operations are, and I really need to be resilient to these transit changes which are happening and which we have all seen in last 2 years. I for the that resilience accounts to me that I now need to project myself or my company or me as a leader or my company as a group would now need to show more sustainable way of our the way we consume energy and the way we project how our emissions towards should be. In fact, many of those, if you talk of industries which are largely funded by private equity or venture capitalists, they are now looking at their portfolio companies as what kind of emissions you are doing, because they are raising funds which have primarily an carbon tax. If you are not able to utilize that money for the right purpose and for the right kind of industry it is. So this transition is happening not only in India but across the globe. At this moment, you would realize that India presently, which was declared some time back as more than 150 gigawatt of renewable capacity in India, and by 2030, it's gonna be 500 gigawatt of non-fossil fuel capacity, which then would be almost equal to our coal kind of capacity. And we have already put in the recent COP summit, we've already done and said that by 2070 we want to be net carbon zero. And many other companies are being asked to put a pledge for net carbon zero much before the country goes, because these are the large industrial consumers. If they don't do it by 2035 or max by 2050, at a country level, how do we do it by 2070 would be a very, very difficult task. Now, pledging is easy. The what is difficult is this is an expensive way of looking at it. Now, if a very, very carbon emitting industry sees it from a perspective, right now these are steel refineries, fertilizers, and many of those large carbon emitting kind of an industry. If they see it from that perspective, it's very difficult for them to now look at it that the processes can be changed to utilize more green fuel. So while a transition to RE100 or an EV100 pathways looks easy. So when I say RE100, it's you get your entire energy from renewable sources. And when I say EV100, you're already your most of your fleet, which could be in your supply chain, your internal, external, is already electrified kind of a thing. But you really need to look for net zero. That's not sufficient. Your processes needs to be looked at from all your sustainability reports needs to be created. The importance of an sustainability officer in a large organization has gone tenfold with this whole ESG aspect coming in, and that is what is going to do a quick transition towards the way we look at energy and low carbon mix of that whole energy mix.
Uh, Thank you so much, Kapil, for your inputs. From the Ministry of Power, in December 2021, we already have an input that around 40% of energy today produced in India is from renewable sources of energy. Be it hydro, be it wind, solar, and so on and so forth. So I'm really optimistic in terms that by 2030, I think the share of renewable energy is going ahead. And you subtly put your point across to our viewers as well, that it's not only about renewable sources of energy, but it's also about the kind of processes the organization have to incur different net zero strategies if they can put in, so that we are able to achieve the mammoth task what our prime minister has set goal for us by 2070, being a net zero carbon country. Thank you so much, Kapil, for your inputs. I would like to go to Prashant. And Prashant, just a question which is pretty similar, but yet has a very importance in the kind of thing we are into. One of the most crucial aspects of the climate transition is the transformation of energy and land use systems. And this may come with disruptions to energy markets, potentially raising cost and volatility for producers as well as consumers. Now, are we as an organization, are we ready for the energy transition and the immense economic impact it would carry? I think Kapil also talked around it, because it would carry a lot of immense economic impact. He talked around various other sectors of the industry. Your take, Prashant.
Yeah, thanks, Pankaj. I think Kapil did touch upon the aspect of it, and we both come from the energy domain for sure, right? So we understand this, what question you asked about. So there is no, in my opinion, there is no doubt, all the companies across the globe now are moving towards sustainability practices, which Kapil mentioned about. And whether it is energy or even pharma company, which Omar leads, there is no doubt every company is moving towards sustainability practices. It comes at a cost for sure, and I would say that also the companies are way ahead in this curve in investment and as well as the progress. Now, from did Kapil mention about how the overall picture is? And just let me take a specific example of our own company, right? For example, INEO, we are the world-class gas engine manufacturers. We are into the energy space for sure. So for us, it's even more important how we transition into sustainability practices. So we are very much committed and have made a significant progress in this transition. I'm just giving an example to tell you how the companies are transitioning in this. We are very much focused on improving, reducing the carbon footprint and as well as the emission levels that our products are there in the market and as well coming in the future. So now we look at a little bit more in terms of holistic approach. When you say transition is not only meant from an energy perspective. Is more what Kapil mentioned about the sustainability practices, right? That goes way beyond energy alone as such. So when I say that from our company standpoint, which is gas engine world-class manufacturers, we look at four verticals or four themes, I would say. Of course, the first one is the environment, which covers what we talked about, emissions and carbon footprint. The second one is the labor and human rights. How do we handle these things? And the third one is also the ethics, the policies of the companies, which you mentioned about it, right? How does the policies change over the period of time to be more sustainable? And the last one is also the procurement, sustainable procurement that happens across the companies. How do you procure your material? Is it sustainable way? So all these things, right? It is much more holistic and much larger than energy transition alone as such. So most of the companies today are getting into this space, have made a significant progress. And similarly for us also, we have done a lot of progress in this space. And I'm just mentioning to you, a good news to say just in this week only, the Embarker business, which makes this gas engine for us, has been now upgraded to a gold standard in this sustainability practices.
Oh, great.
Meet all these sustainability stringent guidelines. So that puts us into the top 1% globally among the peers. And this certification is given by Avocado, I think the sustainability practice which Kapil talked about, which looks into a lot more into transition, how the companies are moving. So Avocado is a company which certifies you on sustainability practices for companies across the globe. So, an upgrade within a year from a silver certification to gold standard on sustainability practice is a testimony that, the company is committed to the sustainability practices and move into the much better stringent sustainability practices that companies are looking for and your customers are looking for. So in that sense, Kapil, every company today is aware and conscious. Yes, it does come by some amount of cost, but it is inevitable, and I'm sure all the panels in this will agree that every company has to move towards a sustainability practices in all aspect and holistic approach. There is no way out, and that is how your customers are going to look at it, your suppliers are going to look at it, that is how you're going to be evaluated as a company, as a leader. So I think we are all embracing this. So this is the progress we are all making together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prashant. Anything else to add on? If somebody would like to add on this part of it.
I just want to add on to what Kapil and Prashant said. This is fantastic. I think sustainability is key out here, and both of them very nicely, elucidated why this is important in the energy sector. I also see many other industries have the same concern, right? And like Prashant said, we have to change as industries, as customers' behavior has already changed in the last 2 years. because as the pandemic has forced systems across the globe to respond rapidly to the crisis, we have seen many have already adapted to digital solutions. And at least in my industry, it has gone all the way to telemedicine, remote monitoring.
Yeah.
And this has also been an opportunity to transform healthcare with digital innovation and how we engage with customers, channel partners, and like e-commerce, which is also booming at the moment. And the consumers are used to it. So I can just take an example of my own company. We were just 2 to 3% in e-commerce almost 2.5 years back, and we thought it is going to take us 10 years to get to a 10%. We already 15%. So it's like then you started to think, what is the future going to look like? And as Kapil mentioned, this energy boom that is in the country, I think this is going to go very rapid, and India is prepared for it. I have to say that government has made a lot of provisions for the startups, and there's a startup week and a day where people come together and embrace this new technology. So I think India is ready to embrace this whole sustainability change that Kapil and Prashant have been talking about.
Thanks, Omar,
Omar,
for you. And
that's
Kapil would like
good to hear from a consumer viewpoint, because unlike we who work in the energy industry, if any other sector also believes that the transition is bound to happen, then our job is easy, that we don't have to. So there was a time, I would say, when this whole solar mission started, it was like more of an educating the clients about this importance and all. Now there, so it was a lot of pull which was towards us. Now like there's a good amount of push. We are interested. You give us a proposal, you get that done. But we are interested in energy transition. So it's good to hear that this acknowledgement coming from the other side of the table, and then people do believe. I mean, not only from in pharma, but other industries as well, acknowledging the fact that this is an important aspect.
No, I think Kapil, let me just add, sorry, Pankaj, let me add Kapil what he's saying, right? I mean, we are the gas engine manufacturers, right? So it's very interesting, like what Omar talked about and Kapil mentioned. So it is not only we are conscious, our customers are also conscious, right? So, they are asking questions. Are you silver or gold standards? And where is your sustainability report? This also makes us also to be more conscious. I think in general, I would add to the what complementing sentences. It's good to see the entire world is thinking towards the sustainability practices, and whether it is either side of the table, both sides are on the same page.
rightly said. I mean, energy segment is something which is the backbone of the industry. Not only industry, for our planet as a whole, because without energy we cannot do anything. And undoubtedly, it is the largest sector in the world. If I talk of energy sector per se, including all the sources of energy put together, this is close to $13 trillion globally. If I talk of kind of $100 trillion global economy, if we consider. Having said that, Omar, I would like to go back and reiterate what he said in our growth series, and that was specifically appreciated by our viewers across the globe. And you were very bullish on the kind of growth you're going to have on pharmaceutical sector, and obviously it's a blessing in disguise. Pharmaceutical industry helping at this point of time what we did not have had in, let's say, 100 years ago, way back in 1915, 16, 17, when we had this pandemic. I hope probably people would have been treated much better if we had the kind of technology you had today. But your industry definitely have worked really hard to ensure that every person who can be saved was saved to that an extent. But having said that, as a society stands at the dawn of 2022, in fact, business leaders may want to consider a stance of clear-eyed optimism about growth. Because without growth, there's nothing. We are growing, and that's the only way we can keep things intact, ready, and probably provide this earth for our next generations. What obviously, and that growth is there, and it reflects in the business agendas as well. Despite the vicissitudes of the past 2 years, which we have seen, could there be a post-pandemic boom in the horizon?
Yeah. Pankaj, very good question. And I would say it doesn't need to be post-pandemic. I think pandemic brought the boom. So I say it like that. And maybe it might be different for different industries, but at least for healthcare or pharma, we saw there was an opportunity here. And the companies who were prepared, they took this opportunity, and maybe they're already in the move towards the sustainable level that Prashant talked about. And also, I believe that technology will play a greater role, Pankaj, in healthcare or maybe many industries, particularly through advances in a lot of medical applications, devices that would come in. We have seen, at least in the space of last 2 years, how quickly many companies, including ours, have gotten into RT-PCR testing to now self-care antigen testing sitting at home. So a lot of what happens can be delivered through, a lot of smart data. So many industries, I would say, would look at the smart data and review them and give feedback remotely to their consumers. And there are many ways technology can keep people on track whilst we limit this face-to-face contact. And I think that has been a big change for us. The face-to-face contact has dramatically reduced, and at least in our industry, data suggests that post-lockdowns, 70% of the healthcare professionals would prefer face-to-face, but also a digital connection. So there's going to be a 70-30 where doctors will still prefer to do this thing, remotely. And also, if you look at the data, Pankaj, you would see that India, per se, out of a 1.3 or 4 billion people, there are 624 million people out there who are internet users. And 448 million of them are active social media users. Now, this is a clear indication that there's going to be a complete disruption going forward. So despite all the changes that have happened, I think the boom quite possibly will come with the way that India is changing. And we are now from recovery to adapting to a new reality, I would say. So even before the pandemic took the world by storm, the future of work was a topic widely discussed. So currently, at least in my industry, we see telemedicine and e-pharmacy as the number one. Number two, we see innovative treatments coming in. And number three, most importantly, is the digital landscape, which is transforming the way we look at things. Today, Pankaj, I'm very happy to say, for a person with diabetes, sorry, I'm getting into details of where we do a little bit of business. So Prashant and Kapil, we are into diabetes care. So with the pandemic, what happened is now the patient could not go to the doctor. So we and many other companies have worked on a digital interface so that the patient can sit at home, look at their self-care, and through data, through internet, can communicate with the doctors without even going and meeting face to face. So coming back to the point, Pankaj, if the companies were prepared to embrace this change during these 2 years, I would say they're already booming. And hence, we are all into a stage where it's going to be reality of the new normal workforce implication. The number games will change, the workforce optimizations will happen, there will be capability developments, performance and productivity matrix would change. There will be emergence of new roles, and culture and well-being will be a top priority. So I think this boom is already happening, Pankaj, and India, with the kind of great support from the government, I think we are embracing the change much faster than any other country in this world. And I would like to hear from Prashant and Kapil also what they think about it, because I've seen a lot of changes and they are for positive. So I wouldn't think that it will take 1 or 2 years to get a boom. We are already on the booming side. Over to you.
Omar, what I feel is you rightly said, because the kind of growth aspects which we are getting, and obviously, in 2020, there has been a dip, in the economy to start with, and it was not only in India, it was across the world. But after that, the kind of rebound which we have done as a country, that's phenomenal and that's fantastic. One of the reports says that by 2031 we could be the third largest economy of the world. That's too optimistic, but still, if we believe on the reports, that talks about the kind of growth India is going to have. And if that happens, we are more than double to the size what we are today. And that itself shows about the kind of inputs or the kind of efforts every sector is putting in to ensure that they realize the dream of not only India but help across the world people or a global community as a whole. So that's there. Anything else which Kapil you would like to add on to what Omar just said?
No, this is quite obvious, and the role of digitization, what Umar just this thing is equally important in the energy sector as well. And we've unfortunately we were not able to realize this aspect, but we were pushed to realize the aspect that how artificial intelligence, machine learning aspects in the whole energy transition can also help, and we've all realized that. I'll just give a very very small example of that. That look at the there are many households in Europe which put up in solar power installation on their roof. Now what they do is form a community and form a blockchain. Now if I have a surplus energy, I can put it on a grid through a blockchain mechanism, and my neighbor who has dearth of electricity can buy it from me at a pre-agreed price. At a pre-agreed price, I can sell that electricity to the grid as also. And if in community is doing that on a whole rather than a residence, they can also participate in a similar way to the local grid. So we also need to embrace this whole blockchain things, etc., as we move forward. But the role of digitization in this sector also is well recognized. I can just add it from what he gave an example, especially with the telemedicine and healthcare industry. This is equally important in the energy sector as well.
Thank you, Kapil, for sharing, the idea of power bank happening in Europe, and I'm sure, sometime in the future we might have it here in India as well. Prashant, your take, please, on this, because you have been very bullish on people, and you have always believed in the talent and the capacity of people around.
So
Please.
I would say, Pankaj, both of them have put the right perspective on that, and absolutely true on the digitization. Just a little broader on that aspect, right? The pandemic has given a push of multifold for few businesses, which saw an upswing. Whether you call it as for the online digitization of learning, or telemedicines, or e-commerce, of the anything to do with AI-based educations or systems or businesses, they all got a huge push in the pandemic, and we can see this, right? Whether you can see the valuation of the Byju's and all those companies have gone above outside the roof actually. So some businesses received a huge push in the pandemic, and some businesses, like as Kapil said, were pushed to look this as a whether the glass is half empty or half full perspective, right? So there are industries which have been capital intensive and also requires a touch and feel. For example, look at when you go and want to buy a car, the traditional conventional way is to visit a showroom and get a feel of your car and do a test drive, and then sit there and negotiate and understand the color, the features, and so on. Now, how the world has moved in the last pandemic 2 years, most of the automobiles are also pushing for an online car purchase. To an extent, even some of them, Mahindra has listed in Amazon. Look at the way the transformation is happening, right? So to point what Kapil said, some of the businesses are pushed, and then now they're realizing, hey, look, I think there is an opportunity that a pandemic has given to us. It's just how you look, your perspective of it. Yeah. And now the world is changing, right? So some businesses received a multi-fold push, and it came very naturally because of the pandemic and because they were in the right moment and the right time. And for the rest of the businesses, I think, we just have to look at different perspective. Of course, we were pushed, but that push gave us a different dimension to the business and opened up a lot more different avenues. So I think in a way, I would say the pandemic, there's always an optimistic view to say all of us are moving to the new way of business models. That's how I put it. Yeah. Thanks.
Rightly said, Prashant. We are now breaking the glass ceilings of our thoughts, and we are, feeling that how thoughts can be barrier, and how sometimes with our thoughts only we can challenge the status quo and reach to the next level, which we are already seeing things coming up. Now, the impact of the new technology on the bottom line is growing, Prashant, and you know it well. But AI also gives us a powerful example, and it's a very powerful tool, and it's being used in all the industries for that matter. 27% of business leaders now report that at least 5% of EBITDA are attributable to AI. This may be specifically true for companies following best practices, relying on the cloud, and making incisive investments. Now, are you embracing new technology as quickly and holistically as you did new ways of working at the start of the pandemic?
Of course, I mean, very pertinent question, right? I mean, we are in this today digitization, and now we are doing a virtual conference, right? So that is how the things are moving now. To your question, Pankaj, let me take it one step back, right? So we talked about the pandemic, how opportunities have come, and how these businesses are moving and embracing this technology of AI. I will give you again a specific examples and then correlate ourselves how we are doing it. Again, I take an example of our businesses to correlate it in a better way, because we are capital intensive engine hardware which goes there and sits in your factories and or power plants and so on, right? So now this pandemic led into a different dimensions for us. So it was more, how do I move and look at these engines which are there on the ground, and as well give them the surveys, as well monitor those engines and so on. Where do I go? I have to adopt and embrace the AI. And what the companies, like many of us, our companies, including ourselves, what we did is we invested heavily and as well improved the digitization technology of what we call energy management, and we name it as a my plant services. My plant services. So what does my plant services do actually is you can remotely monitor your engine, gas engines, products. You can as well do proactive service calls. You can operate your engines. You can troubleshoot your engine. So this is completely AI cloud-based services. Now, I'm also glad to say that this pandemic also made customers also embrace this. There was an expectation before the pandemic, like hey, someone is going to call you and your service engineer is going to come and stand in front of my service shop, and then he's going to service and so on and so on. That's how the conventional world was. But now look at the things, how it has changed, right? So now I have my customer holding a mobile phone and looking at his mobile phone and telling, hey, there is a trigger of some alarm or some kind of a message which is summoning you, and I'm also getting the same thing. So it has changed, right? So today, for example, I talked about this my plant. We are offering to these customers, and we have more than 10,000 plants that are under the my plant operations now. And exactly what Omar talked about telemedicines in his industry, how it has changed. It is the same story for a capital intensive gas engines too. Whether we are pushed or it is a push or a pull, we have embraced it. And I'm glad to say and congratulate our customers also. They also have embraced it. And that's an interesting part, right? And today, we are collecting 900 billion points of data annually and doing completely cloud-based AI analysis of these data, and then giving the data back into information to the customers on their performance of these engines, how they're doing it, troubleshooting it. The world has changed, Pankaj. I would say the world has changed. And I have been in this industry for the last 23 years. The kind of transformation that has adaptability and the investments equally by the companies in this digitization is enormous in the last 2 years. And I'm so glad that I've been witnessing this change, and how the companies are adopting, and as well as customers are looking at. And now you talked about EBITDA, and I'm telling you that the investment that we have done in the my plant has much higher returns. I wouldn't probably quote the numbers here, but I can tell you it has been a very successful story. And I can just tell you that it is not only for us. I'm sure this would something Omar would agree, and as well Kapil will also say that how Reliance is doing it on this thing. So there is absolute embracing of this new technology, and that is how we do it now. Thanks.
Rightly said, Prashant. And in subtle words, you said that pharma is has shown us the way how to bring in that changes. So all credit goes to Omar and your fraternity, right? Because you have definitely shown the way to other people. Then look, this is how it is done. I can do it for retail. Please do it for businesses as well.
No, what Prashant is so right. I think what he said was customers have started understanding this and they've come forward and done this, Pankaj. So there's an increased demand of data and artificial intelligence driven predictive analysis, and customers understand that. There's been a rapid rise. For example, there's something called as a track and trace programs in at least healthcare that has majorly helped in keeping infection levels under control. And the COVID pandemic has hit the healthcare industry badly, which the layman may not have realized, but has realized it very quickly. Healthcare practitioners, organizations, and many of the patients have taken a lot of losses, and therefore they understand that this is a very important part of the future sustainability that Kapil and Prashant have been talking about. I also want to just relate one thing, that the AI or Internet of Things and the smart cities, and taking it a little bit forward to what the government is doing. And I think the government has a fantastic plan, not only in healthcare, but also digitization in public sector. It is great to see that the government is approaching digitization in different ways. The concept of, let's say, the smart cities is going to promote the utilization of digital infrastructure and the data decisions to plan an entire city, for example. And this is going to be critical going forward. Collecting, storing, and processing the critical data on a large scale will open actually many possibilities. Let's say from planning public transport networks, the storage of waste management, and we need it quite possibly in a city like Mumbai or Delhi, for that matter of fact, and delivering electricity, and maybe it's the energy sector and how it is going to transform. Let's hear it from both of them. Initiatives in the field of environmental health to predictive analysis. So therefore, I believe government's initiative of this smart cities may lay the foundation to predict and prevent future pandemics. This can be powered with additional tools like artificial intelligence and Internet of Things, Pankaj.
Thank you so much, Omar, for the inputs. Rightly said that we are going to drive the next uh, world forward by predicting things way earlier, so that we are fine enough to tackle next time even more better. So this time we have tackled it is in a fantastic way, and we cannot say that the next pandemic cannot come, because this would be the part and parcel of our lives. That might come in another 5 years, 10 years, or whatever the time is. I hope it never comes, but if it comes, we should be better prepared than what we were. And you rightly said, Omar, we are building infrastructures around it, we are building systems around it, so that next time we are better prepared. Thank you so much, Omar, for the inputs. Anything, Kapil, you would like to add on before I have a very specific question to you? You'd like to add on something to
No,
what
nothing.
Omar? Okay, so fair enough. So here we go for a specific question to Kapil. This may be the time for CEOs to make bold decisions, reshaping the direction of their organization and realigning capital and talent accordingly. Are you adopting a strong growth mindset in your medium term strategy as the pandemic evolves or the effect subsides?
So let me first give a very small example, before we, talk on, the growth aspect, or to look at from an capital as well as manpower viewpoint. when the pandemic hit, as a CEO of a large IPP, I was, I honestly, I didn't have in one-to-one interaction with the people working at the project sites. So the projects review were done typically by an project head, and somehow I would then discuss with him, and things are, sorted out, eh, even in a review mechanism. What it has changed possibly, we did in all teams call. So at least you get in connect with the people working at the project side also, and you are able to hear them that if these are the problems they are facing, or is there anything which you could do much faster to resolve that problem. That was only possible. Maybe it was possible before also, but it never came as in reality to do it that way. And another very small example I could say for the way interactions with the talent and the employees was happening. Let's say there is a company which has various offices across geographies in India, and typically at a month end we would celebrate birthdays of all employees for that month. Now, if you're not doing that in a particular office, you can always set up and call for all the geographies put together, and then that was happening. So that also brings us to what everyone else is doing and bring it to a similar platform, then localizing, learn things which are happening very, very local. So yes, these small things, and what when we spoke on, very the way capital would be deployed and the way talent pool would be looked at. See, particularly we have now seen couple of trends which are already being spoken by Prashant and Omar. Is first is digitization and use of IoTs, etc. So we have seen there has to be a very, very balanced way, the way we see human workers and intelligent robots. Now, if there is a shift, which I see isn't happening in energy industry also, so if I run a solar power plant, I'm just giving an example. I'm now replacing majority of tasks what a human was doing, which was cleaning the solar panel, with a robot. Okay, but so there is always a dichotomy that and dilemma that, jobs are not created for local people and all that. But at the same time, if you look at the brighter side of it, the other side of the jobs are definitely creating in the way these robots would be made, the way they will be done to different applications, and that would keep on doing. And as we gather more data, look at this, that people have been talking and complete electrification of the fleet, or the way auto industry would happen. So from that perspective, if you see, you would not call a car running on a battery if you are charging it still from the conventional energy. So then also you are using coal, or instead of shifting it towards there, here you are still just doing that. So there's still a question of solar powered battery charging things. But then look at the advancements, even from a solar perspective. And I'm trying to give more examples to to explain things which are already being spoken. Take an example of earlier we were largely doing from a power plant the corrective and preventive maintenance, and that becomes a mindset that your kappa strategy needs to be very clear, and so that you can get availability of a solar power plant which is 99% plus. Now we have shifted, not because we as a power generating entity have shifted. In fact, our suppliers who supply us solar inverters or the switchgear have also shifted more towards in predictive maintenance. That now I can predict if these things are happening, such events are happening. In 4 months, there is a greater probability that this component can fail. And this is what you can do right now to change that failure. So people have shifted towards the way predictive maintenance would be looked at, and that has caused a great amount of change. From a manpower perspective, I would say there is a shift in the way we look at talent pool and the whole employee experience. We have all seen uh, in last would not contribute to this to the last 2 years, but at least the era of digitization, we have seen that the younger talent is given almost equal importance, and not just the work experience. We have seen more gig workers coming, more remote workers coming. So the way to handle these more gig workers and remote workers would be very differently, the way organization needs to be structured compared to the way we were looking at it from conventional methods of having an headquartered and having this at my project sites, etc. Also, so these things would continue, and I feel good for us. We have seen more flatter, agile organizations, and even if you have a brand nowadays, people do ask for the authenticity. That what has caused is a change the way the uh, internet and digitization has brought is awareness also. So the authenticity is also questioned. Even when you are a brand, you really need to, people would put you on your toes, that yes, so are you doing the right thing or not. So these are things, and most of these businesses needs to now, for a purpose, the purposeful business is what we are saying. No, we really need to align that this is what I'm actually doing as in business, but there's a purpose to doing it. So organization also would be structured, manpower, hiring, retention, all of that would be done accordingly. And while we say that there is a place where we are trying to reduce the kind of jobs which we were earlier giving, but the amount of data what is coming, and just data also, I'll give an example. When I'm doing an electrification of a vehicle, I have now capability to check the status of the charge of battery, and if required, if a vehicle is moving outside a certain periphery, I can even switch it off. Now, where these capabilities are coming, because I know the whole thing, that where it is driving. Now, this data is only possible because you are doing deep data analytics. Now, this data analytics itself can create more jobs compared to the kind of jobs which we are losing. So there has to be a balance, which the most of the industries are continuing to do that, and that balance also would now also continue. Not that it's just a push; it's just a little bit advancement which has happened in last 2 years. The pathways was already on, and it will continue to function. And I feel from 20 till 2030 will be in a much more advanced way of looking at it, and uh, majority of manpower, like half of the population, if they have access to internet or smartphones, and if they are less than 35 years, it's a great opportunity available for India in that sense.
Thank you, Kapil, for your inputs. You rightly said that consumers are getting smarter nowadays, and they have a, they are questioning the ways things are moving, and how, whether the organization is working towards a specific purpose, or what is helping the organization to grow forward. Now, when you say this, there has to be a surprise element to consumers, and we are seeing the next thing coming up. In terms of companies are moving towards a single entity to the ecosystem. You talk of any company in this world, bigger, smaller, medium size, whatever size. They're moving towards making an ecosystem. And my question is to Omar, a specific question. As a company, do we need to be, more, purposeful, because it is the need of the, although we were, it's nothing, it is more coming more, because the consumers want to hear from the organization, for that matter. It's not that, because every company has a specific purpose, and that's why it stands into the market. What's your take around it, Omar?
Yeah. No, I think purpose drives the teams, Pankaj, and that leads you to where your inner core strength is. For example, for us, it was very important. We were very clear that we need to reach every patient everywhere, wherever they are. And I think that is not possible, like Kapil mentioned, with the whole workforce change and hybrid gigs and all of this coming in. We needed to think, or we all need to think as companies, how do we continue to live our purpose without bringing a complete disruption? And therefore, purpose drives the organization. Let me give you a slight example there. Partnerships play a very important role, Pankaj. What we have seen with this pandemic, we knew that coverage is going to be a really big issue. And therefore, you cannot sit in cities like Mumbai, Delhi, Calcutta, Chennai and say that I'm covering the whole of India. They might be giving 40 to 50% of the growth, but 70% of the population still resides in the primary care setup. And I think that's where brilliantly governments have come up with, or authorities have come up with clear, strategies. Like you've heard about Ayushman Bharat, and I think this is a fantastic of getting into the primary care setup and ensuring that 60% of the population gets access to care. And the purpose now, at least for organizations like us or the industry like us, is to ensure that there is access to care in the country. And walking hand in hand with the government is extremely important, because access to care also means that there should be affordable access to medication, treatment, a lot of other things around healthcare. So I would say the purpose of every organization will define this. And to us, it was very important that it's not only the top cities, it was also making sure going into the peripheries, going into the primary care setup, working with partners to ensure people get true relief when it comes to diabetes, Pankaj.
Thank you so much, Omar, for your inputs. Prashant, do you have anything to say on this? Any other input which you'd like to add on?
Yeah, I think Omar captured it well, and as well Kapil talked about the capital allocation. Maybe I can touch a little bit on the both a couple of my views on this, right? When I look from a first, let's say, capital allocation in this pandemic, let's look at before and after, right? So when I look at before, there used to be a lot of infrastructure in terms of the offices that capital allocations are done, and then you have travels of your employees across the globe and meeting customers, and of course investments into your products and solution. That's always an NPI portion, which will continue whether it's a pandemic or post-pandemic. The investments in your product and solution will remain the same. But when I look at the post-pandemic, right, there is a silver lining. Most of your capital allocation that used to happen in terms of the, let's say, infrastructure of offices and travel has really come down now. Right? I mean, Kapil and Omar, we all know that we don't travel much often, what used to be there. So from that point of view, the capital allocation is reoriented to a certain extent. To say that we invest more in terms of the infrastructure required for more of a virtual offices and also on. That's where its infrastructure, the capital is going on. But on a larger scale, most of the companies have realized there is a bit of a savings that they see in capital allocation to the offices, infrastructure, and travel, and so on. That's some amount of savings, but suddenly there is a significant small amount of increase in infrastructure that goes into the all these IT-related activities. Now that leads to the other side of the story, which means your employees are at home, work from home, in remote location. That brings a question on the productivity, right? So I touched upon before the call also, right? Most of our employees are working from home and may not have much of a travel. How do you ensure and make sure that the productivity also goes up or keeps the same as it is in the before? So that's where some of the investments keeps going to support the employees, and some of the capital allocation goes in those directions. So it is, I would say, taking from the right pocket and putting into the left pocket before and after pandemic. But of course, the bottom line, I would say, a little bit of savings that each companies will see in the post-pandemic, because the offices and infrastructures have come down to an extent. Is my view on this side of the Kapil. Do you agree, or how do you look at it? That I'm sure Reliance is a big organization. I'm so with the Omar also, big organization, a lot of employees across, right?
Yeah, but I don't see, rather the productivity has gone up, I would say. You have possibly you are working longer hours, and sometime that's also a little bit of challenge with many people.
Of course.
Now, very true, Kapil. I think we are working longer hours with all this work from home. But the major thing is, and Pankaj, to one of your points earlier, what the future beholds for people. And I think Kapil mentioned it very, very nicely, and so did Prashant. I think there needs to be a balance going forward. I see it as two things. One is there will be an evolution of the operating model, or it's already happening. And the second one, I see that we as industries, organizations need to reconfigure ourselves. Let me explain this a bit. So when it comes to evolution of the operating model, it'll more mean like the onset of or enablement of employees to access work from anywhere. And work from anywhere means it could be work on site for R&D and operations, for example. It could be work virtually for marketing, project management, finance. It could be gigs like Kapil mentioned. It could be seasonal or non-regular requirements. And it could be a hybrid when it comes to the customer service, sales, or it could be flexi contracts when it comes to operations and IT. So you can see that the operating model will change quite a bit. And Prashant is right, the capital investment will change accordingly. But like Kapil also mentioned, this whole new prospect will create jobs equally, and there'll be a balance there. So that was the evolution of the operating model. The second one is the reconfiguration, and I clearly believe that there will be a recalibration of roles which will happen to be unique for each firm to best support their strategy and business operating model. And hence, no one size fit all approach could be adopted going forward. It could be a specialist role, it could be a critical role, it could be a flexible role or a core role. So I think there is going to be an evolution of the operating model and a recalibration of roles going forward. But as Kapil mentioned, it'll create the balance, it'll create the opportunity for development for people going forward, Pankaj.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Omar, for your inputs. So this was a very intense as well as fruitful discussion of all the thought leaders with us. We discussed about people, process, planet, change in business dimensions in terms of operating model, and also our priorities. We got to know a lot of insights from different businesses, and we also got to know how we are interconnected. While one is, let's say, the heart of a body, the other becomes the mind of the body, and the third becomes maybe the backbone of the body. But together, how the industries are shaping the world, that becomes very, very important for all of us. Now, I'm sure this has been a fruitful discussion for all our viewers who have watched us across various platforms and who would be watching us as we post it on various platforms post our discussion. And getting to learn from the leaders is something, one of the main things which has come up post pandemic, and I think this is also a new observation and a new reality for that matter. I'm pretty sure leaders like you may not be investing that time which you invest nowadays to probably share it with every person down the lane. And you rightly said, Umar, that more than 48 crore people in India is somewhere connected with internet, maybe through Facebook or through LinkedIn or maybe whatever platforms. They definitely get to learn things from, because you may not know who you are influencing to become a better human being and lead the industry tomorrow.
Great.
So thank you so much for being with us on our Vyapt Connect. It's been really wonderful to have all three of you on our session. Thank you so much, Kapil. Thank you so much, Omar. Thank you so much, Prashant.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Pankaj.
Pankaj.
Thank you, Omar. Thank you, Kapil. It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.